Let me begin by extending a welcome and a thank you to the esteemed members of the Koç family, the chair of the Board of Trustees, Professor Nur Yalman, President Umran Inan, members of the Board of Trustees and Overseers, and members of the faculty. In addition to thanking the Koç Foundation for myself and for everyone here, I want to offer congratulations to the foundation on its 50th anniversary. Alongside its many accomplishments, building a great university like this is a remarkable achievement, one very, very few philanthropists have succeeded in doing. And finally, to the students and families of the class of 2019, thank you, and more important, congratulations. It is an honor and a privilege to be here with you. And more than just honored, I feel keenly the responsibility of finding something meaningful to say to you as you embark on this next phase of your life. Most of us talk about our lives like a story, an uninterrupted narrative in which events flow seamlessly one to the next, and who we are evolves progressively in an understandable, coherent manner. But if you think about it, you'll realize that's not true at all. Life, as we actually recollect it, is a collection of moments, key memories that mark important instants for one reason or another. Not all of these instants are momentous. Some are, on the surface, insignificant events that, for reasons we may not be able to explain even to ourselves, become significant. I worked for my father when I was a child, helping at a restaurant he owned. One day, after work, he and my mother scolded me for not working hard and for being sloppy. I remember that talk vividly, where we were, what they were wearing, how I felt, the carpet I stared at while I felt the shame rising in my neck. I suspect it was a talk they gave me many times because I was lazy and sloppy. But for some reason, I remember only this one time. And to this day, when I find myself tempted to slack off or be lazy, that conversation and the shame I felt comes back to me full force. And that's what life is like. Life is like a game of connect the dots, more than it is like a story. In Connect the Dots, you get a piece of paper filled with dots, each one with a number next to it. The dots look randomly distributed with no obvious pattern. Then you connect them in the right order, and a picture emerges. That's what life is like. The experiences that stand out are like the dots on that page, and in connecting them, we create the picture that is our life. College graduation should be one of those events, one of those dots, an event that you remember for the rest of your life, because it represents something that you have achieved and marks the start of something new. It is a genuine milestone that we celebrate here today. This moment when you formally cross the threshold from youth to adult, from schooling to working. Your childhood is now formally and officially over. That's a meaningful step, and I hope you are proud. You've worked hard to get here, both in and out of school, in your classes, in your other activities, in your personal relationships, and in your life generally. But you did not do this alone. No one can, and no one does. You've had the support of parents and grandparents, brothers and sisters, friends and teachers and colleagues and coaches, and more. They all played a role in getting you here. I was oblivious to this when I was your age. Not that I saw myself as self-made or anything like that. I just didn't think about it. Then at my own college graduation, I saw a friend, a child of immigrants, and the first person in his family to go to college, taking photos with his extended family, a great many of whom had come to the graduation. He took off his cap and gown, and one by one, each member of the family put them on. They took a series of pictures of the whole family like that. each photo with someone else wearing the cap and the gown. Later, I asked him why, and he said he would not have made it but for them. It was, he said, their graduation as much as his. And I thought to myself, what a beautiful idea. But I also realized how thoughtless I had been not to appreciate that this was no less true for me. So I want you to take a moment, all of you. Turn and find your family or friends in the crowd. I mean this, do this. Turn and find your family or friends in the crowd and tell them thanks, because it's their graduation too. Which brings me back to my dilemma. What do I, an aging American baby boomer, have to say to a group of young men and women from Turkey? I thought perhaps I could talk to you about the United States and its constitution and history, which were my areas of special expertise when I was a professor. But why would you want to hear about that? And to be honest, there is nothing much to emulate or boast about in the United States these days. But I can't talk to you about your nation either, because who am I to tell you anything about Turkey? And then I thought, well, if I can't talk to you about your culture, and I can't talk to you about mine, perhaps I can talk to you about things we share in common. We need that a lot, for we are living at a time when our differences are growing in importance, and our similarities and all of the things that ought to connect us are losing salience. I came of age at a time when there was controversy and ugliness, but also optimism and hope. My childhood was dominated by the specter of Vietnam, but also inspired by the civil rights movement. We lived with fear of nuclear war, but saw the end of the Cold War. I watched the first man walk on the moon, traded in my IBM Selectric typewriter. I bet you none of you even knows what that is. Traded in my IBM Selectric typewriter for one of the first desktop computers, and was wowed by the introduction of technologies that you take for granted, but that seem to us the impossible stuff of science fiction. In my lifetime, the world became accessible in ways my parents never dreamed of, and I watched as hundreds of millions of people in Asia and Africa lifted themselves out of desperate poverty. By almost any measure, our world has never been better. There is more prosperity and more opportunities to create prosperity than ever. There is less war and violence, less famine and disease than at any time in human history. Our capacity to control our environment, to educate our children, to make good on the promise of humanity has never been greater. Yet it hardly feels that way. Instead, the world is angry and boiling over with resentment. Everyone sees themselves as victims of someone else, and many use their victimization as a weapon to shut down or justify hurting others. Even as the world has become more accessible, we have retreated into narrower and narrower identities, identities based on blood or soil or religion or ideology. But instead of celebrating these identities for the diversity they reflect, and the spectacle of human possibility they exhibit, we turn them into barriers and make them excuses to justify callous indifference, belligerent selfishness, or violence. This is happening, moreover, just as the technologies that brought us so far give rise to problems that can only be solved if we act collectively. The information technology that links us together makes us vulnerable to catastrophic cyber attacks, while the internet that makes knowledge freely accessible has become a propaganda machine of deadly reach and effectiveness. And overhanging all of it, the direst threat of all, is global warming from the energy sources we depend on to make everything possible. The world is deeply troubled. Things feel different, to me at least. The scope and scale of our problems seems greater today, and the most daunting of these problems seems more daunting, certainly than at any time in my life. And they require a seriousness of purpose and a willingness to take action that the world's current leadership is apparently unable to muster. And you thought this was going to be an inspirational speech. Actually, it will be, at least I hope so. But first, I do want to offer an apology an apology from my generation to yours, because we are the ones who made this mess, and we're the ones not handling it, which means we're leaving it to you to solve. You must do better than us. You must be better than us. Fortunately, if history teaches anything, it is that great challenges bring great opportunities, which means you leave here with opportunities to make a difference that are in fact truly rare. Your lives can be great and can have great meaning. So rise to the challenge, be ambitious, take chances, do something that makes the world a better, safer place. I could almost end here, and given the heat, I bet many of you wish that I would. Because anything else I might say will just be commentary on that last line. I toyed with looking to others for words that I could use to inspire you. Lots of commencement speakers do that, you know, drawing on the great writers and poets and intellectuals. But after spending time with other people's words, I decided that it didn't feel right to rely on someone else's insights, and I should share something from my own experience. So let me offer a few thoughts. They are not complicated or especially eloquent, but they are, I hope, worthwhile counsel. To begin, if you ask me, the most important thing to know if you want to accomplish things and make a difference in the world today is this: you must be prepared to listen to those who think you are wrong. And I mean really listen. Listen with empathy. Listen so you see and understand the world as they see and understand it. You must accept that when people disagree, there always are arguments on both sides. And people on both sides genuinely believe their point to be reasonable and right. It is a mistake, and one I hope you will not make, to assume that people who disagree with you really know that they are wrong and you are right, but have some evil reason for pretending otherwise. I single out this notion of listening with empathy because I think it has never been more important or more absent than today. We live in an age of ideology, a time when for too many of us, facts and the interpretation of facts are determined and controlled by ideological commitments rather than the reverse. And a genuine exchange of ideas has practically ceased. Listening with empathy is not a specialized skill. It is a mental discipline. It requires self-conscious effort, but anyone can adopt it. It calls for exercising what you might call mental muscles, which, like any muscles, need regular use to stay fit and strong. Yet if we are to make progress as a society, and especially if we are to make progress on problems like cybersecurity, preserving democracy, and climate change, few things are more important than keeping these particular muscles healthy. In every case, taking the time to make sure you understand the best version of your opponent's position will not only make you more effective, it will also lower the temperature and increase the chances of reaching a suitable outcome. Indignation and outrage may still be called for on occasion, but if we listen to each other attentively and fairly, the situations in which that turns out to be true are likely to be fewer and more appropriate, and your passion and commitment are likely to be more effective. Your time at this university has equipped you to exercise just this sort of discipline. You may have studied particular subjects and gained specific knowledge, but the real lessons, picked up almost by osmosis, have been how to learn and how to think critically about what you know, what you hear, and what others tell you. Facts are not whatever we want them to be. They are not something we can control or make suit our convenience. In her wonderful poem, At the Fish Houses, American poet Elizabeth Bishop compares knowledge to the ocean, saying it is clear, moving, utterly free, and flowing and drawn. I like that word, drawn. We draw knowledge from the world of facts much as we draw water from the sea. An intelligent life draws knowledge from what nature and experience make available to us. using them to renew what we know and what we think we know. This process of renewal, of drawing upon what lessons the world makes available to us, is hard. For as Bishop says, knowledge is like the icy cold ocean. It can taste bitter and briny, and it can burn your hand or your tongue. Challenging beliefs can be hard. Changing minds is definitely hard, which is why people do it so seldom. Knowing when a cherished belief remains valid and when not can be the hardest thing of all, especially when that belief is shared by friends and allies. Yet we must find ways to change minds if we are to solve our problems, either our minds or those who think we are wrong. We may not all have to agree, but we must find ways to accept and accommodate our differences. I cannot tell anyone how to make those decisions, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I am here, though, to tell you to think, to which I would add only that to think well, you must be relentlessly, and I do mean relentlessly, honest with yourself. If there is a quiet nagging voice in the back of your mind, and you'll know it when you hear it, walk a few steps down the road and look back at yourself and ask if you are proud of the choices that person made. One final point. Being honest with yourself is not the same thing as doing what you think is right. Life is complicated, and all too frequently you will face situations in which you may find yourself needing to do something other than what you personally believe. Strange as this may sound, and more frequently than you might believe, being principled can actually be the easier course and the less responsible one, because it leaves others to make the difficult compromises that need to be made when reasonable people disagree reasonably, or worse, disagree unreasonably, and a solution must be found. The burden of leading, and in the years to come, I hope each and every one of you finds yourself in a position of leadership, includes the burden of deciding when to put aside your personal beliefs to achieve peace in the interests of others, or because there is something that needs to get done. Being right is not enough. Even if you are right, you must also find a way to be effective, to move the world in a better direction. These are hard choices, and I won't pretend that I can tell you how or when to make them. I can tell you only that you must expect to face them. And if you want to lead well, you must determine how to remain principled, how to hold fast to your values, and yet how also to compromise, because that's what good leaders do. When the time comes, take care not to deceive yourself. Do what you must, but be sure that your inner voice is honest and aware of what you are doing and why. Otherwise, you may lose yourself without even knowing it, as each unacknowledged compromise makes the next compromise not easier, but something worse, something that seems less and less like a compromise. Be honest with yourself, and you'll be able to handle even the sharpest curves life throws your way. For in the end, you will have to be your own best advisor, and you will need to find your own lessons and wisdom. I say all this with faith in your future, confident that you will do better than we have done. I had the honor to serve as a dean at Stanford University, and as a dean, I spent a great deal of time with alumni, which is to say the students of the past. I got to see the many ways in which they went on to do remarkable things. I got to hear firsthand the many ways in which they surpassed us, their former teachers. I loved that they surpassed us, just as you will surpass your former teachers. I loved even more that the time they spent with us had played an important part in shaping who they became and what they accomplished, just as the time you spent here has played an important part in shaping you. We get you now while you are still young, still forming your ideals and making the plans that will shape your future. The privilege of teaching is the privilege of having a role in that process. And I know that everyone on the faculty here feels honored to have had that role and has tried their very best to be worthy of it. You are the remarkable alumni of the future, and we can't wait to see what you do. So make your teachers proud, make your families proud. Most important, make yourselves proud. Congratulations, and I wish you the best.